"Hey Trump, think you're better than us?" The voice echoed through the school hallway, drawing the attention of the students lingering by their lockers. Barron Trump stopped in his tracks, his tall frame tensing as he turned toward the sound. A group of boys stood in front of him, led by Ryan Carter, a senior known for his sharp tongue and even sharper fists. Barron had heard the whispers before. Being the son of a former president meant he was always under scrutiny, whether it was from the media, his classmates, or even teachers. Most of the time, he ignored the comments, the smirks, and the passive-aggressive remarks. But today was different. Ryan smirked, stepping forward. "Bet you think your family's name makes you untouchable." Barron clenched his jaw. He wasn't looking for a fight, but he wasn't about to back down either. The hallway grew silent as students gathered, phones already out, anticipating a viral moment. Ryan shoved him. "Say something, Trump, or are you just going to hide behind your daddy's name?" For a split second, Barron considered walking away. But then he saw a freshman, small, nervous, watching from the corner of the hallway. The kid looked terrified, clutching his books, as if he had been on the receiving end of Ryan's cruelty before. Barron took a deep breath, locking eyes with Ryan. "You think being a bully makes you strong? It just makes you weak." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Ryan's smirk faltered for the briefest moment before he clenched his fists. "You're going to regret that, Trump." The tension in the air was thick. What happened next would change everything. It was the end of the semester, and the school had organized an assembly to honor students who had shown remarkable growth. Barron had no idea who was going to be called up, but when the principal mentioned a student who had shown immense courage and growth, Barron's eyes widened. Sure enough, Ryan was called up. As he walked to the stage, Barron gave him a thumbs up. Ryan grinned back, slightly nervous but beaming with pride. He'd come a long way. The crowd erupted into applause as Ryan stood at the podium. "I just want to say," he began, his voice shaky at first, "I made a lot of mistakes, but I'm trying to be better. And the first step was realizing that being kind doesn't make you weak. It makes you strong." Barron smiled, leaning back in his chair. This was exactly what he had hoped for. Ryan's eyes scanned the room, then landed on Barron. "And I owe a lot of that to Barron. I've learned a lot from him. He didn't have to stand up for me, but he did." The room went quiet. Barron felt a lump in his throat. It wasn't often that people publicly acknowledged his efforts. He wasn't used to it. But in that moment, he realized how much it meant to see Ryan take responsibility for his actions. As the semester ended, Barron and Ryan became genuine friends. They didn't just share a common bond, they respected each other. They spent time together after school, working on projects, or just talking about life. Ryan's reputation had shifted so dramatically that even his parents had noticed. Barron remembered one day, Ryan's dad came to school for a parent-teacher meeting. Barron overheard him talking to the principal, his voice filled with awe. "I don't know what happened, but it's like he's a different person, a better person. I haven't heard him talk like this in years." Barron smiled to himself. Sometimes the smallest moments could spark the biggest changes. Months later, Barron stood at the front of his school, watching a group of students walk by. Some he'd known for years, some new faces. What struck him most was how many people had changed. Ryan had set off a chain reaction. People who had once been afraid of each other, people who had once felt isolated, were now connecting. Respect was becoming a mutual value in the school, not just something expected from one side. Barron could see it. The school was more united, more understanding. And though the world was far from perfect, this small corner of it felt like a better place. As Barron headed toward his next class, he felt something he hadn't experienced in a long time. Peace at IT wasn't just about what he had done for Ryan. It was about what Ryan had done for everyone. For once, Barron believed the world could be a little better. And maybe, just maybe, he and Ryan had made their own contribution to that change. And as for Ryan, the boy who had once been a bully, he was now known as someone who helped others, who stepped up when it counted. IT wasn't just a new beginning for Barron. It was a new beginning for everyone. A hush fell over the hallway. Students leaned in, their eyes flicking between Barron and Ryan, sensing the brewing storm. Ryan's fists tightened at his sides, his knuckles turning white. "You think you're some kind of hero, Trump?" Ryan sneered. "You don't know how things work around here." Barron didn't flinch. He could feel his heartbeat in his ears, but his face remained calm. "I know exactly how things work," he said evenly. "You push people around to make yourself feel bigger. But deep down, you're scared." A ripple of whispers spread through the crowd. Ryan's face darkened. He wasn't used to people standing up to him, especially not someone like Barron, someone who usually kept his head down and ignored the noise. "You think I'm scared of you?" Ryan laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Fine, let's see how brave you are." After school, parking lot. Barron knew what that meant. A fight, a showdown, a chance for Ryan to put on a show in front of the whole school. For a moment, Barron considered refusing. He wasn't a fighter. He had no interest in meaningless brawls. But then he glanced at the freshman again, the kid who had been watching nervously. His fingers gripped his books so tightly his knuckles were pale. This wasn't just about him. "I'll be there." Barron's voice was firm. Ryan smirked, patting him mockingly on the shoulder before walking away. "Hope you can take a punch, Trump." The crowd dispersed, some murmuring excitedly, others shaking their heads. Barron exhaled slowly, his mind already racing. He wasn't sure how this would end, but he knew one thing, that he wasn't going to let fear control him. As Barron walked to his next class, the weight of the challenge settled over him. He wasn't afraid, but he knew the fight wasn't just about Ryan. It was about the message it would send to the entire school. "You really going through with this?" Barron turned to see Jake, one of the few friends he had made since enrolling at the school. Unlike most students, Jake never treated him differently because of his last name. "I don't have a choice," Barron said, his voice low. Jake scoffed. "Of course you do. You could just ignore him, walk away, and let him keep thinking he can treat people however he wants." Barron shook his head. "If I don't stand up to him, no one will." Jake sighed. "Look, man, Ryan isn't just some loudmouth. He's been in fights before. He knows how to hurt people." Barron nodded. He had seen Ryan's handiwork firsthand: bruised arms, broken glasses, kids too scared to report him. Then it's time someone stops him. Jake ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "You could get suspended. Worse, you could get hurt. And let's be real, people are going to film this. The media will have a field day." Barron knew Jake was right. Anything he did would be scrutinized. If he fought back, he'd be Trump's son causing trouble. If he lost, it would be plastered everywhere. But none of that mattered. Not when he saw the fear in that freshman's eyes earlier. "I have to do this," Barron said, his voice steady. "Not for me. For everyone else who's too scared to." Jake studied him for a moment, then sighed. "Alright, man. If you're dead set on this, at least don't go alone. I'll be there." Barron gave him a grateful nod. "Thanks." As the final bell rang, signaling the end of the school day, Barron took a deep breath. The moment of truth was coming, and he was ready. The parking lot buzzed with energy. Students formed a loose circle, their phones out, cameras rolling. Word had spread fast. Barron Trump was about to face off against Ryan Carter. Jake stood beside Barron, his arms crossed. "Last chance, man. You sure about this?" Barron rolled his shoulders, keeping his breathing steady. "I'm sure." Ryan pushed through the crowd, his usual cocky smirk in place. He was taller than Barron by an inch or two, broader in the shoulders, and radiated the confidence of someone who had never lost a fight. "Glad you showed up, Trump. Thought you might chicken out." Ryan cracked his knuckles. "This won't take long." Barron met his gaze, unfazed. "Let's get this over with." The crowd went silent as Ryan lunged forward. He swung a hard right hook, fast but predictable. Barron ducked at the last second, sidestepping with practiced ease. Ryan stumbled slightly, his confidence flickering. "What the?" Ryan straightened and came at him again, this time throwing a wild left. Barron dodged once more. "You fight, or what?" Ryan snapped. Barron exhaled slowly. He had never been in a real fight before, but his father had always emphasized discipline. Barron had trained in self-defense, not to attack, but to control a situation. Ryan charged again, but this time Barron moved differently. As Ryan swung, Barron grabbed his wrist, twisted it slightly, and used Ryan's own momentum to shove him forward. Ryan lost his balance and stumbled to the ground, landing hard. The crowd gasped. Ryan pushed himself up, his face red with rage. He charged again, but Barron sidestepped, and planted a firm hand on Ryan's shoulder, forcing him back. "Stop." Barron's voice was calm but firm. "This doesn't have to go any further." Ryan growled. "You think you can just embarrass me and walk away?" Barron sighed. "I didn't come here to fight. I came here to prove a point." He turned to the crowd. "You all came to watch a fight, right? To see if I could stand up to Ryan?" A few people nodded hesitantly. "Well, here's the truth. Standing up to a bully isn't about throwing punches. It's about showing them they don't control you, that they don't get to decide who's afraid and who isn't." The crowd murmured, some lowering their phones. Ryan looked around, realization dawning on him. He had lost, not just physically, but in front of everyone. Barron leaned in slightly and lowered his voice. "This isn't strength, Ryan. It never was. Find a better way to be somebody." Ryan's fists unclenched. His shoulders slumped. And for the first time, there was no arrogance in his eyes, just confusion. Maybe even shame. Barron turned and walked away. Jake fell in step beside him, shaking his head with a grin. "Dumb? Man, that was kind of legendary." Barron just smiled. He didn't need to win a fight to prove himself that he had already won. As Barron and Jake walked away from the crowd, the buzz of conversation lingered behind them. Some students were still recording, some whispering, others looking at Ryan with a mix of shock and newfound realization. "You think he got the message?" Jake asked, glancing back. Barron exhaled. "I hope so. But guys like Ryan don't change overnight." They reached the school entrance, where a familiar black SUV waited. The driver, a stern-faced Secret Service agent, opened the door. Before stepping inside, Barron turned to Jake. "Thanks for backing me up." Jake smirked. "Hey, someone's got to keep an eye on you. Can't have Trump's kid getting beat up on my watch." Barron chuckled, shaking his head before getting into the car. As the door closed, he leaned back, letting the tension drain from his body. The moment had passed, but something told him the consequences were far from over. The next morning, Barron walked into school expecting things to be normal. Instead, every hallway was filled with whispers, sideways glances, and murmured conversations that stopped when he passed. He barely made it to his locker before Jake appeared beside him, phone in hand. "Dude, you are everywhere." Barron frowned. "What do you mean?" Jake turned his screen around. A video titled "Barron Trump Takes Down a Bully Without Throwing a Punch" had racked up millions of views overnight. The comment section was a war zone of praise, debate, and political arguments. Barron sighed. "Great. Just what I needed." "Are you kidding? This is huge. Everyone's talking about how you stood up to Ryan without violence. You even got people on both sides of the political world agreeing on something for once." Jake grinned. "That's rare, man." Before Barron could respond, a voice interrupted. "Hey, Trump." Barron turned. Ryan stood a few feet away, looking far different from his usual cocky self. No sneer, no confidence, just hesitation. Jake tensed. "Oh, great. Here we go." But Ryan didn't make a move. Instead, he shifted on his feet and exhaled sharply. "Can we talk?" Barron studied him for a moment. Then, with a small nod, he said, "Yeah, let's talk." Barron and Ryan walked toward an empty bench near the school courtyard. Jake watched warily from a distance, ready to intervene if necessary. Ryan sat first, elbows resting on his knees. He hesitated before speaking, his usual arrogance nowhere to be found. "Look, man, I was a jerk," he admitted, his voice quieter than Barron had ever heard it. Barron folded his arms. "Yeah, you were." Ryan winced but nodded. He rubbed the back of his neck, struggling to find the right words. "It's just people expect me to act a certain way. My dad, let's just say he's not the nicest guy. I guess I picked up some of his habits." Barron didn't respond right away. He had dealt with expectations his entire life. Some people assumed he was spoiled. Others thought he was just another rich kid with an easy life. But no one really knew what it was like being him. "Look, Ryan," Barron finally said, "having a tough home life doesn't give you an excuse to treat people like garbage." Ryan nodded. "I know. He sighed. "I saw how you handled everything yesterday. You could have humiliated me, could have hit me, but you didn't." He glanced at Barron, his expression unreadable. "Why?" Barron thought for a moment. "Because I know what it's like to be judged before people even know you." Ryan exhaled sharply and shook his head. Mom, I really messed up, huh? Barron smirked. Yeah, but maybe now you can start fixing it. Ryan looked down, nodding slowly. I guess I can try. For the first time, Barron saw something in Ryan that he hadn't before. Regret. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of change. Ryan sat there for a moment, fidgeting with his hands. Trying isn't exactly my strong suit. Barron smirked. Yeah, no kidding. Ryan huffed out a small laugh before glancing around the courtyard. Students were still sneaking glances at them, whispering. The whole school was waiting to see what would happen next. After a beat, Ryan sighed. So, how exactly do you fix being the biggest jerk in school? Barron thought for a moment. Then, he stood up and patted Ryan's shoulder. You start by proving to people that you're not that guy anymore. Ryan frowned. And how do I do that? Before Barron could answer, a commotion near the cafeteria caught their attention. A younger kid, probably a freshman, was backed up against a wall, clutching his backpack as two older guys loomed over him. Ryan's face fell. Looks familiar, huh? Barron said, crossing his arms. Ryan hesitated, then exhaled sharply. Yeah, it does. Barron nudged him forward. Well, what are you going to do about it? Ryan looked back at Barron, searching his face for something, maybe a way out. But there wasn't one. This was his moment, his choice. After a long pause, Ryan squared his shoulders and walked toward the scene. Barron stayed back, watching. Hey, Ryan called out, his voice steady. Leave him alone. The two bullies turned, confused. One of them, Tyler, laughed. Ryan? Seriously? Since when do you care? The freshman looked up, eyes wide with shock. Ryan clenched his jaw. Since now. Tyler scoffed, stepping forward. Come on, man. Don't tell me you're going soft. Ryan took a deep breath. Just walk away, man. For a tense moment, no one moved. Then, to everyone's surprise, Tyler and his friend exchanged looks before rolling their eyes and stepping back. Whatever. Your problem, not mine. As they walked off, Ryan turned to the freshman. You okay? The kid nodded hesitantly, still unsure if this was some kind of joke. Ryan gave a small nod before walking back to Barron. He looked uneasy, like he wasn't sure how to feel. Well? Barron asked, raising an eyebrow. Ryan exhaled. That felt weird. Barron grinned. You'll get used to it. Ryan let out a short laugh, shaking his head. Guess I owe you one, Trump. Barron shrugged. Nah, just don't make me regret it. For the first time in years, Ryan smiled. A real smile. And for the first time ever, Barron actually believed that maybe, just maybe, people really could change. Weeks had passed since the day Ryan stood up to the bullies. The school environment had changed in subtle but undeniable ways. The tension that had once hung in the air, between the students, between the cliques, and especially between Barron and Ryan, was dissipating. Ryan had kept his promise. He wasn't perfect, but he was trying. His relationships with his classmates had improved. The bullying stopped. The students who once feared him now respected him. The shift wasn't just external, it was internal too. Ryan had started to believe in himself, in the idea that he didn't need to act tough to be strong. Barron had been keeping an eye on him, as he'd promised Jake he would. But what struck Barron the most was the moment when Ryan had started standing up for others without being prompted. One day, Barron passed by the cafeteria and saw Ryan sitting at a table with the same freshman who had been harassed. They were laughing over something so ordinary, yet so profound for Ryan. It wasn't just about doing the right thing once. It was about making it a habit. Ryan was changing, and Barron couldn't help but feel a sense of pride.